Well, thank you very much, Jimmy, for that look at the economic outlook of the country 1 year on. Now, let's look at the governance side. I'm now joined by three people in the studio. Nerima Wakojiwa is the Executive Director at Siasa Place. Cornelius Odor is the Deputy Executive Director at the Kenya Human Rights Commission. And Advocate Ariba Samba. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. On that day, on that second Tuesday of September last year, William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua took oath of office as President and Deputy President, respectively. And among the things that they said in their maiden speeches was that this government that they are going to lead is going to be a government that is led by the rule of law and strict adherence to the tenets of the Constitution and the law. And that this government is also going to be one that is responsive and accountable to the people of Kenya. One that will be based on the true tenets of the hustler. Now, 1 year down the road, and I want to start with you, Cornelius, what do you think? Are they living by those ideals that they set for themselves?
Very powerful statements, and it's easily said than done. We were all convinced that immediately after the pomp and color at Kasarani, things will take a turn for the best. But 1 year down the line, I must say that the realization has not met the expectation of most people at the lower part of the pyramid. And if you were to judge the impact of the immediate economic policies that have been taken by this government, it is yet to bear the fruits. And if you pick just one thing like the cost of living, it has not improved by any imagination. So I think the plan was there. We are still stuck in processes. We are yet to see the impact of the plan.
Rima?
I find it interesting that that was one of the first promises they made, because just a few weeks after we saw cases just dropping like, I don't even know, like flies, honestly. They were dropping fast and furious. And we were even wondering what will remain. And, it became a debate around, is the issue evidence, are certain institutions not doing their work well enough? And we saw a lot of ignoring of the rule of law. We saw a lot of ignoring. So,
ignoring of the rule of law?
Oh yeah, it was
like
not the rule
examples.
of law.
You're saying a lot. Just give us
There was a lot, because the caste position is one. It was very clear, and then pushing that back and basically saying, you know what, we're still going with it, whether you like it or not, and it being brought up again. That's one example. And even when we see, certain individuals who are speculative in terms of not being particularly charged, but have cases that are still standing, being appointed. And Kenyan, the public was furious, but still going on with it and not caring about what the public felt. Even when we see the Finance Act again, there was pushback in terms of participation, and then trying to take it back and, justify that public participation was done. And then there was this push in terms of whether you disagree with me, we will definitely deal with you again. So there's just been a lot of behavior that you would say we are really not working with the rule of law, but definitely the rule by law, where we saw Maandamano now being called unconstitutional because it depended on who was doing the Maandamano. There was so much. I can give you a whole thesis. The law was used to be advantageous to the government and not necessarily to the Kenyan people.
Well, Gil, do you agree?
Not necessarily. From where I sit, maybe if I start from where the river has left, on specific issues she has given, like the issue of the CAS. Of course, you and I know that right now the chief administrative secretaries, as they are commonly referred to, are not in office. This is a matter that is active in court, and the litigation process is ongoing, and nobody has...
What does not in office exactly mean?
Sorry?
What does not in office exactly? What does it mean?
It means that they're not performing the functions that during their appointment...
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm very sure. Nobody's in office. You can walk through those ministries. I think no salaries. I think I've had this conversation with the CS Treasury, and he said that, hey, if then you are to pay them, from which voted are you supposed to pay them? And at the end of the day, that responsibility comes to you as a person.
Are they doing anything with government, even donating their time and energy?
I see a couple of them around, just like you and I, moving from one place to another, which I cannot say that...
So they're not working.
They are not performing government. I've not seen where
they're performing a civic duty and responsibility.
I've not seen a person who has been appointed as a CAS going out to represent a government official as we speak right now. As I can say, I see a number of them in rallies and functions, government functions, just like anybody can be able to attend. But I can confirm as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya that by dint of the orders, remember Dennis Itumbi went back to court and tried to push the Court of Appeal to allow them to perform some functions before then the High Court made its ruling. And the Court of Appeal was very clear that in an event where you perform those functions and you probably earn, and the court proceeds to pronounce that this is not right, then recovering that, whatever you might have spent from the taxpayers, was going to be had. And of course, most of them, you see them going here and there. I see them just around, just like another ordinary Kenyans. In my assessment, when it comes to governance and the rule of law, I can say that this government has made steps away from what we saw back then. The issue Nerima is raising of the issue of dropping of charges. This is an issue that we have been trying to have a discussion on. Was it an issue where the judicial systems and the criminal justice system was being used in an unfair manner, targeting particular individuals? Because you and I believe that the office of the ODPP is an independent constitutional office, which is supposed to make its decisions as per the constitution and as per the act that governs it. So in my overall estimation and in my overall assessment, we are headed in the right direction in terms of governance.
If we just look at that, and we can debate this for a bit. So the DPP reviews the files that are before him and the ones that he's taken to court. And he says, in this particular one, we had a gentleman's agreement with the investigators that they were going to give me more evidence that I was going to produce in court to support the cases that we filed in court. And I'm feeling that this is not forthcoming. And this is the reason that he gave for many of those cases, the reason to withdraw many of these charges, because I don't have supporting evidence. All right? So that is an independent institution performing the function that it's doing. This heads of the administration, if they're coming in and they're saying many people were persecuted politically, and this is the evidence that we are now seeing in what's happening in court, wouldn't you be expecting them then to call out for accountability of this particular office to make sure that Kenyans never go through something like this? Isn't it what you'd expect, Nerima?
It is something that you would expect, but we also have to realize where have we come from. There's the faith of the judiciary and the public and the way they view the judiciary. We have seen the public go back and forth on whether they trust the judiciary or not. When it was the issue of BBI, we saw the public fully trust the judiciary when they said BBI stops now. And everyone was happy, reggae had stopped. And that's where we are seeing the trust of the people going back to the judiciary. But then when you see certain instances of major cases, we're seeing big fish basically not going through the court systems. It's a concern for ordinary Kenyan citizens, because even when we talk about the judiciary, who has access to the courts? The courts, they're not that many. Kenyans are very many. In fact, we depend on chiefs to come and negotiate our issues at home, our household issues. We do not go to the courts. So even when we push for accountability, I would say most of the people who push for accountability is civil societies. Civil society organizations that understand the process of litigation. Yeah. The average Kenyan citizen is unaware that they can actually take a matter to court as a citizen themselves if they're interested in doing that. But even if they're unaware, there's also the issue of expense. Yeah, it's not something that's cheap. True. And to have the capacity and skill, people like Zamba, they are not cheap people to be able to hire, I'm
actually approaching this from this angle, that here is a president who's come into office and he says, we are going to clear all these bad manners, we are going to live by the rule of law, we are going to be accountable. And then you're a president and you see a DPP who has been persecuting people allegedly, then withdrawing those cases and basically just enforcing that whole perception that this was persecution. Shouldn't you be taking steps to forestall such cases in the future? That's what I'm asking. As one who is championing, rule of law and living by the rule of law, wouldn't you expect something more, some words or some actions from the highest office in the land to say, clearly what we were saying, we are being vindicated by what the DPP is doing. So what we expect is some action that will make sure that this never happens.
Yeah, sure. And we did raise these issues even at the time of appointment of the National Intelligence Chief, the former DPP. We did raise that on what threshold did he admit these cases? What has happened less than 1 year down the line? Now these cases have not met the requirement for prosecution. So it means therefore that he was influenced then politically, and in his own admission he did say that he was under political pressure to take up some of these cases. And now then it means therefore he was there currently under the new regime under political pressure to drop these cases. And that draws the question of independence of these offices. One of the promises that President Ruto gave us is that he is not going to use any state institution for political work. And in putting pressure, probably, on the DPP to do some of these cases, is going back on his own promise. And that's why rule of law must also be looked at in terms of the independence of constitutional commissions and independent offices. Are they really allowed to do their work? Or they are just people there, but somebody else is pulling the strings behind the scenes? So we must allow institutions to be institutions. Give them enough resources to do their work, and also allow them the independence of judgment, so that if we don't agree with their decisions, we can challenge in the court of law. Yeah.
I think, Eric, for the longest time, one of the challenges that we have had is setting up systems, and at the end of the day, not allowing those systems to work. And that goes to the base of the bad manners that we have had for a long time as Kenyans. In that sometimes we have that suspicion that if today you see me and Nerima is probably the DPP and I'm an advocate, you wouldn't think that Nerima and I are talking about, she keeps a lot of chicken in her village. You wouldn't think that we're having that conversation about the chicken. You'll probably be thinking there's a file that we are discussing. That suspicion, when you look at Eric, you don't look at Eric as the chair of IBC. You look at Eric and start following up where the grandmother of Eric comes from, and probably who Eric, and all those political inclinations. So I feel that this is a systematic, how can I call it? This is an ingrowth bad manners that we have as a country, and which we have to all agree to come out of. Because, I make an admission that most times we set up very, very good systems, extremely good. Even some people come to benchmark with us. We have a robust judiciary that is entrenched in law with several laws. But then at the end of the day, how well do we see these systems working? We have the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And every time after elections, that is when we start asking, okay, so that commissioner, where does he come from? That commissioner, who does he relate with? So I feel that this is something that is in us as Kenyans. And the moment we agree to fully leave systems to work as they have been set or as it is anticipated in law, then most of these challenges, we will not have them. Eric, today, if I'm appointed to chair Judicial Service Commission, the first thing you'll start asking is, where does he come from? And those people who are interviewing him, where do they come from? We have not reached at a stage where we have that faith that this system is going to work away from the personality who is in charge of it. And most of these problems that we see around, Eric, they come from that bias.
Let me ask you, how is that going to be solved? Do you think the leadership from the very top will help resolving this?
I think this needs to start from the top. I fully agree the buck stops from the leadership itself. And how this needs to start is, one, there are these conversations that, as Nerima was saying, when the judiciary makes a ruling about something, some particular issue that I agree with, then I fully support them. 2 days later, if they make a decision, I probably call them names. If today IBC, meaning the judiciary, says BBI is bad, depending on which side you are, you say I fully agree with this.
Yeah.
Flips the other side, makes a decision nullifying an election of an individual. You flip the other side and say, judiciary is not independent. You come out and say, IEBC conducted my gubernatorial elections very well, but when it got to conducting for the members of parliament, I think there was a problem. So then you start asking, is this really the same IEBC we are talking about? Yeah. Or we are looking at a particular interest in the system that we have? And that is where the conversation needs to start. Because most of our leaders, starting from the top, the opposition and everybody, they come with some political capital which is assigned to a particular region. And whenever they say anything, that political capital works with them. And until we come to that level of saying, hey, let us allow the systems to work, whichever decision that is going to come, I fully agree to abide by it. It doesn't matter what it's about us. It's about us. It's about our bad manners.
It's about our leaders.
It's about our leaders.
How the good manners, how we should live.
Yes.
Well, all right. Now let's then give a direct scorecard here on the matter of the judiciary. President comes in and says, all right, so I know that there's this matter of pending judges for the appointment. I'm going to push that ahead. I know there's an issue of the judiciary fund and having the judiciary have an independent fund. I'm going to push that. And I know there's a matter of the government, the executive being accused of flouting court orders and not even regarding court rulings. On that, in the last 12 months, how would you rank, how would you rate the president on his relationship with the judiciary?
I think if I can start that one, I'll start with, you saw the first order of business was to ensure that the judges then who had been appointed were sworn into office. Then the next thing was operationalization of the judiciary fund. If I look back as of now, I cannot recall any court order that this administration has gone against. Maybe Nerima, any? There is no, so far so good. I think in the last 12 months, if we are to be very honest, this administration has not gone against any court orders, all which have been issued starting from the chief administrative secretary positions. Of course, we have litigation against, in terms of who is supposed to sit in cabinet. We have litigation, we had litigation in terms of the finance bill. On the face of it, as far as we are concerned right now, there is no court order which has been against this government, and this government has publicly, or rather has flouted as we saw in the past. Remember, there were several orders that required the president, then now the retired president, to appoint the judges who had been vetted and the names had been forwarded. Yeah. And publicly, he decided not to do that. So on that alone, as up to now, whichever relationship that was set.
The return of Miguna to the country.
Of course, Miguna came back to the country. Now, probably as we go forward, we now need to ask ourselves, after all this has been done to the judiciary, how does the common Mwananchi feel the impact of the judiciary? Because the measure of success of the judiciary, Eric, is dispute resolution in terms of the local Mwananchi, the taxpayers down there in Kisumu, the taxpayer down in Mombasa. How do they feel? Maybe we can have that in a minute or two after we're done with that.
0 to 10, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest.
In terms of the effectiveness of the judiciary?
President William Ruto, yes. Relationship with the judiciary. And obeying court orders.
I'll give an 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cornelius? I'll give a 5 because I must say that it was a good thing for the president to immediately appoint the 6 judges, because that was creating some uneasiness between the judiciary and the executive. And of course the judiciary fund was a good thing. But we've seen he's been very quick to raise his personal disagreement with some of the judgments, to the extent that some people have been told to drop cases. I don't know whether that is encroaching, or those cases dropped out of will, and people were forced to drop those cases. Even when the finance bill was suspended, we had the conservative orders. We saw the fuel price increase from 8% VAT to 16% VAT. So where is this adherence court rulings?
Maybe we should have asked EPRA, because EPRA is the institution in charge.
But EPRA is part of government.
Well, could the president have told EPRA, no, listen, there's a court order?
And I expected to see the EPRA Director General being arraigned in court for contempt. I really waited for that. I don't know what happened to.
So you deny him the 5 because of some of these instances, Cornelius?
I deny him the 5 because I've seen, you see, there is this political posturing. that probably had to take place within the very first days of this government. That was good. But we've seen increasing that systematically, there is that quickness to respond to some of these rulings if they don't favor government. Yeah.
Rima?
I agree with Cornelius. There's too much mingling, and it's concerning. And I don't have evidence, but there's also rumors of him calling, pertaining to certain cases and coordinating with judges. He's very involved as a president. But even though we're talking about systems and allowing them to work, it's difficult when the executive decides your budget and you have to behave a certain way to receive that resource. And institutions will struggle to be independent as long as they rely on the permission or approval of another institution to be able to allow them to function. Because if they don't have some form of partnership, because I think the arms are interesting, they're supposed to be independent, but still some form of interdependence. And it's a very tricky balance, and it requires characters and individuals who have a very futuristic vision of an entire country and not personal interest. And so it becomes difficult because a lot of these institutions have individuals within them that run them and keep them functioning. And so it's a tight balance.
So 5 out of 10?
Yeah, even that I'm feeling is high, but it's fine.
Let's go to security. Because among the other things that he did immediately was talk about looking at the police and how the police had conducted themselves in the previous administration and saying this is going to change. One, these extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances is a thing that we must look at and confront. And he actually came out and said he pushed DCI George Kinoti out of office. He also came out and said, look, there's this whole squad that was doing all these bad manners and it must be disbanded. And talking about all these issues, and then also saying that the Inspector General of Police should have some form of independence in how they decide their operations and their budgets, and then creating those offices. But then since then, we've seen how the security sector has performed. There's, of course, the investigations on Shakahola, there is the security operation in the North Rift, there's the investigations about what happened during the recent demonstrations. With all those, again, Wakili?
Of course, I fully agree that there have been challenges in terms of the security apparatus. More so, places like Lamu. I saw as late as yesterday we lost some officers who were on patrol to IEDs. And from my personal view, I feel that once and for all we need to address this issue more so of procurement of items that are used by our officers in the frontier areas. Because the security sector has one of the largest budget, but I fail to understand how whatever is procured is not fit for purpose. Because for example, our brothers and sisters who are in Lamu and other operation areas, they expect to have vehicles which are fit for purpose. Sometimes I see when a vehicle is hit by an IED and you look at it and you wonder, was this a tin that was just crushed by a class 4 baby? So for me, that is an area I feel that this government has not yet fully addressed in terms of how to secure our officers who work in frontier areas. But again, on the hindsight, I understand that the team that was led by CJ Maraga, which I understand that is nearly releasing its report, has some radical recommendation when it comes to those issues. The issue of the operation in the north, I saw the CS Kindiki indicating that it has been successful. And I think today CS Duale and CS Murkomen were back in Baringo to oversee the operation, the opening up of roads and infrastructure. And then now you come back to the general operation of the security sector and the disbandment of what was clearly referred to SSU or something. Yep. I mean, Eric, there was a time that some brand of vehicles was highly feared in this town. Nowadays, you ask an ordinary Kenyan, those vehicle brands, which is a very good brand, which I can't name on air, is no longer feared, which is a sign that we are shifting from that side of when you see particular sector of the security sector, then you want to run. But I'm looking forward to more collaboration between the public and the security sector, most of the Kenya Police Service, the force as then it was, now it's a service. And the Inspector General has clearly said that he looks forward to see how to transform the service as it is to a better service.
But don't forget, we are looking at the president
and
his discharge of his duties
to the security sector.
With the security sector in perspective. Is he helping the public gain more confidence in the police?
Of course.
Is he dealing with arm's length without much interference with the National Police Service Commission and allowing then the police to run as much as, not really independent, but able to run using its own command?
Two notable things, of course, the designation of the Inspector General as an AI holder in the police. And then number two, we have the Maraga Task Force that was supposed to look at police reforms when it comes to Kenya Police, prisons, and NYS, which was added later on. So it will be interesting to see the kind of radical recommendations that task force is going to release. But on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how the president has performed, I will go to a 7 in terms of how he has helped in terms of the security sector.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's achieving expectation.
I mean, in terms of achieving expectation. But now the question is, the people who have been empowered, how have they moved? Because you see, what are they doing to ensure that whatever that has been handed to them is able to they're at the end.
But as far as you see William Ruto, the president, you give him a 7.
Yes, in terms of even the pronouncements he has made with regard to the relationship with the police and the general security sector.
Cornelius.
Okay. First, I must say that the response and what you are seeing in the North Rift is largely commendable. Let's give credit where it's due. We can now see some level of calm. We hope it will be sustained, but so far so good in terms of what's happening in the Rift. But I must say that reforming the police will go beyond giving them the financial independence. I think for a very long time, the security sector, and especially the security, the police have been ranked highest in terms of corruption. That has not changed. It's business as usual. People still collect bribes openly. And we need the change beyond the material things. We need the culture of the police as enforcers of law and order to change in this country. I think when Kibaki came to power, Kenyans were very optimistic. And I remember people even arresting police officers who were caught seeking for bribes. We have not seen that kind of enthusiasm in this regime. And I think we'll need more than just financial independence and these knee-jerk reactions to respond to sporadic attacks. We need a systemic overhaul of the police system. And this issue about political interference using security agencies to settle political scores is something that we must really move away from.
Do you think that is still happening?
I see a lot of it because...
that's one of the things that they were very clear that this will never happen again.
Yes, they played victim during campaigns on this whole question about weaponization of security. And it appears they're on the track to applying the same mechanisms, using police to muscle even civic actions. See, these mandamanos were the ultimate test of if there was any change in the security sector. If anything, those vehicles you said that we used to fear, they have come back in new models. And we see them chasing people here and there. Others masking themselves as news reporters. So these things have come back in new version that we did not imagine. Just less than 1 year of this administration.
1 to 10?
So I think it definitely give it less than 5. Let's say 4.
Yeah, below expectation.
Below expectation, because the obvious things that we expected to be done immediately are not being done. We are not going to wait for Maraga. There are things that have been seen and there were recommendations that were supposed to be implemented like yesterday. Why are you dragging our feet? If you are not intent on using the same mechanisms that we played victim to.
Okay.
I'm really thinking about, you know, some of the responses I've already had from my co-panelists, and not even thinking about the conflict in terms of the frontier areas, whether we shouldn't steal Kenya. The cattle rustling is still very rampant right now. Areas like Sondu are still dealing with conflict right now. And in some of these instances, there's concern that we might have some rogue police officers involved. And even when we look at police brutality, still a concern. When we see young people, mainly from slum areas, still dying and being killed in broad daylight and using the excuse of they are thieves. It's a concern to me because it's an issue that we are not taking seriously at the moment. When, if you ask a young person right now what they think about a police officer, it is fear. If you could avoid them, you would avoid them. And even when you interact with them, the first thing you think is, have I done something wrong? And you want to make sure that you're on the right side of the law. And even when you are, they can still find a way. And you will see, especially when we talk about the high cost of living, they're also trying to survive. And it will become now a dog-eat-dog world, where all of us are trying to survive, by the way. And if we can use our authority and our position to eat from you, we will. And that, for me, is a concern when people's lives are at stake. When we're talking about now illegal arms in the black market, and some of these officers even being part of it and coordinating in cahoots with gangs, it's a concern. So for me, it is low. It would be a 6, because even we did see within the reports, there was a moment where we were concerned about the security of the nation, where we were seeing confidential information in places it should never be. And we were concerned about that. And even wondering who are in these high positions of power, putting an entire country at risk. And we have seen the president involved in politics, which I think is very different in terms of his leadership style. We have been a country that doesn't meddle in the politics of our neighbors. But this president has been vocal on issues and even sending troops to Haiti. He has been involved. But do you know, Somalia, our neighbors, they allow any African country to enter their borders without visas except one. And that one country is Kenya. Kenya needs a visa to enter Somalia. No other country does. And it's because of the political beef we have had. And some of these things are because of the involvement, even sometimes of our troops when they're in different countries, that our president decides to allow them to go, and their behavior sometimes. But it's not to say that all police officers are bad. No, I'm not saying that here.
You're saying that there's still some work to be done.
There's a lot of work
to be done. What should the president do? What is it that's happening that the president has not done that's leading to what you're seeing now?
The emphasis of why we need a police service. I think it's not just about changing uniform and allowing them to pick the blue that they're going to wear. It's also ingrained. We still have a service that doesn't understand the policies that exist to protect the people. Even a simple thing like a gender desk to report rape is not in our police stations. So even that service for a woman to feel safe to come and report that this has happened to me, a lot of women will not go to the police.
Okay.
They're afraid of going.
Okay. Now I want to move to appointments, because that's a big one, all right? When he's constituting his government, the president is expected to abide by several things and several norms. Number one, the president is a symbol of national unity, and the government should reflect that entire fabric of the nation. The Constitution expects that, public appointments should also have regional balance and all. gender, youth, and all interest groups should be represented. How is our government? I'll start with you. It's time.
He took quite a long time with those appointments. It took months. I remember even wondering, there were so many positions that were left open for a while. I think I even remember talking to Samba about it. And so you could see that he was being very strategic with the appointments, very political with the appointments. And I hope that it doesn't hurt him in the long run, because we have very political people in positions that are actually technical. And I think the previous administration had a bit better in terms of selecting some of the right people to head some ministries that you need some of the expertise. So I think that that's going to be a challenge for him. Number two, I was expecting to see younger people. I did. When you tell me that the youngest appointment is a man in 47, don't tell me that man is a youth because he dresses young and tries to act young. I expected younger people in his appointments, which he did not do. Number three, there was an outrage of the fact that in the appointments, the number of women, few. They were few. He did not meet the 2/3. So as much as he's now trying to fix that problem by creating this other, I don't know, it's a board, a committee, I don't know what it is, to basically now push for affirmative action and representation. I think he has seen that, okay, I didn't do well in terms of gender, so I'm trying to do well. So as far as appointments, I'm giving him a 5.
A 5.
Yeah.
Now, on appointments, I think two things in terms of the balancing act. You know, when you're a president, you have sold your vision to the people. And sometimes you go out in the field and you're trying to get people who you feel are going to assist you to achieve your objective. You are a coach who has 50 people in a pool and you want to win the World Cup. And from where you sit, you feel, if I'm to pick 7 goalkeepers, they might help me better than just having a team, than having 7 strikers. So from where I sit, sometimes it's a big challenge in terms of trying to balance and understand what was in his mind when he chose somebody who, in your opinion, you feel that they don't deserve that position. But in his opinion, as the vision bearer and the holder of the plan, strongly feels that they are going to assist him. So sometimes it's quite something, it's a debate that
Bottom line is it should inspire confidence.
I mean, whereas you
people
say
should
that,
have confidence that, all right, so we elected this person was sworn in as president, this person is forming a government, and then this government, we have confidence that this government is going to take us forward.
what if, as the people, you don't have confidence in that person, but the one who is the appointing authority has confidence in them? I mean, Eric, this is a debate I also haven't come to a balance. Because even if it was to be me, there were also some picks I wouldn't pick.
Yep.
But it was not me, it was him. So it's just a balance that I cannot
What would
be able to
happen in
be.
such cases is, over time, you who didn't have confidence in this person and who you are not seeing what the appointing authority had seen, would see what the appointing authority had seen from their work, from how they're conducting themselves, from how they're doing the work. They'll be able to say, this is why he was picked, this is why she was picked. Is there confidence? 12 months, okay, not 12, but about 10 months down the road, is there confidence?
Before I answer that question, there's one thing I have to fault in terms of what was not done right. I also expected to see younger faces in terms of cabinet, in terms of principal secretaries, in terms of the general appointments.
Yeah.
I waited a lot because the president and the deputy president also walked on the path of youth and signed a charter with the young people and set some expectations with them. And I had expected that then, from all that pool of the young people he used to interact with, at least he will have spotted somebody to assist him in taking his agenda forward. We didn't see that. And for me, that was a bit disappointment from where I sit, because whereas he had chosen some people from the technical class, from the political class, and a couple of ladies there, gentlemen, but we didn't see, the youth population was not catered for. And as Nerima says, that it's not about acting youthful, it's about that person being a youth. We are seeing some 70 people trying to act youthful, but are they youth? No, they are not. On the issue of inspiring confidence, I feel most of these ministries, I've seen them signing performance contracts. And I know that when the president had his retreat with CSs and PSs, he gave them an ultimatum. So I'm yet to see, there are a couple I don't see what they're doing. And from where I sit, I don't know whether he's seeing. It will also be a matter of time to see whether he has also realized that the people are not seeing what some of his troops are seeing. So in the general conversation, Eric, sometimes the president can have an agenda. He is not the implementer. In an organization, there are those boots on the ground. And if the boots on the ground cannot carry the vision of the vision bearer, then at the end of the day, that organization cannot be able to fully function well. On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of the appointments, unfortunately for that one, I come back to a 6.
Never go below 5.
I know.
So I think these appointments were a bit worrying to me because most of these characters who were nominated had very, very serious integrity issues just before elections. And some of them even had active court cases. Yeah. Bit corruption, some of them bordering criminal charges that not even been cleared. So you see, when you appoint people who do not inspire public confidence in the office, then it raises the whole issue of integrity. And we didn't quite see. These appointments have not proven as wrong as people who raise doubts about some of these people. If anything, they have continued in their very, very way, reckless behavior of making public pronouncements in a way that does not inspire confidence. And to date, I think, even in the president's own admission, he has started already indicating that some of these characters might not live to the expectation of even him as the appointing authority. So I think the president ought to have taken time. And to the extent that some of these appointments appear to be punishing people for making democratic decisions, is very worrying. The pattern and in the manner in which some of these appointments were done, in terms of the regional representation.
Are you talking about the shareholder comment as well?
Yes, it appears that then you are punished for making a democratic decision. I think the president is a symbol of national unity. And we have chosen this Constitution 2010, Article 4, Subsection 1, that we are going to be a multi-party democracy. So exercising your right in whatever party does not mean that ultimately you have to pay a price for it. What was so difficult in giving us a face that looked like Kenyan? And what has been criticized, Christina as a shareholder government, has made it clear that next time you vote, think twice. You have no shares in government, and therefore you have no rightful space to play a role in the governance of your country. I think that perception has really made us look very bad as a country. I think the president, much as we know that our politics is very divisive, regionally and maybe even ethnically, once you assume the position of the presidency, you can't miss to find people who can play a role in your government across the board.
To 10? 1 to 10?
5.
You're about to give him a 6. No. I want us to conclude because we're running out of time, but on 2 issues. The relationship between that he's fostering as the head of the executive versus chair of the summits, the national government and the county governments, and how the relationship is going. And then also the president as the head of the executive and the other 2 arms. We've discussed the judiciary, so let's look at the legislature as well. Let's start with the legislature. The 12th Parliament was accused of just having been taken and brought as a room in State House. What do you think of the 13th Parliament?
Is there a 13th Parliament? Seriously, because even when you look at the way the Finance Act went, and those who opposed it, I mean, openly, you're being told, if you go against it, I'm watching you. I just want to know who's going against it, it's a very tough atmosphere to be able to work in. So definitely we are going to not hear our representatives go against what he believes is right. So for me, only those with the backbones are going to be able to speak up, and when they do, they will be punished for it. So it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a tough next few years to go against what he says, because he has shown us in the first few months that he will punish you for it. So I don't think there is a 13th.
You don't think?
No. No.
Cornelius, do you think?
Yes, we have parliament, but I think there's a big misconception that this notion that we are in government. There's no government in parliament. What you have is a minority and the majority side. What we expect of parliament, both Senate and the National Assembly, is to play those three cardinal roles of oversight, legislation, and representation. So when you have members of parliament who feel that their primary responsibility is to defend anything coming from government and to push government agenda, then you have a problem. And that's why we've seen that parliament has not given us the quality checks and balances that we expected from it. But we have parliament being used as a conveyor belt just to push through government policy. And I think that that's something that we really need to fight for, because we need a parliament that can be the epitome of the national discourse, where we have really policies being scrutinized and they can be passed or defeated on the strength of how they are going to translate the lives of the common man. But today, we've given you instructions as UDA or Kenya Kwanza coalition or ODM or the Azimio. When the parliamentarians think
so you feel
about
that
issues,
he's encroaching on the independence of parliament?
I strongly feel that parliament is being used as a rubber stamp in most of these issues. What you would have expected is that parliament really scrutinizes some of these policies. And we have a situation whereby we can even have those who are in what, quote unquote, the ruling party, are able even to question some of the administrative decisions of the executive. But we did see very little of that. It's only recently that we've seen a few more MPs starting to question the performance of
cabinet secretaries.
Maybe a pointer to a possible reshuffle in the executive. But then probably they are playing
positively. Come on. You expect them to do this, and when they do it, you still think maybe they are not.
They have not sustained it. They only, it was just for 1 or 2 weeks.
They got a phone call.
Yeah. So what we expect essentially is that we'll give them prejudice.
You want to see more of what we saw.
We want to see more of what we saw.
Okay.
Eric, for the longest time, I've had a challenge with what we call parliamentary democracy, both in national government and in the county assemblies. And this is, for me, an issue that we must have bold discussion about. You go to the county assemblies, it's terrible. Some county assemblies never did, they don't even have the impetus to discuss a bill. Most of them end up only passing mandatory bills. I saw some report by Akina Nerima, and they had some sketch marks in terms of this county assembly only debated mandatory bills the whole year. These ones did this. These ones, they only went benchmarking, but they never even brought the report back. Shifting back to your question, sometimes we have a discussion in terms of, do we have parliamentary democracy? The crafters of the law, as my brother Cornelius has said, anticipated parliament to do legislation, oversight, and representation. But then you come back and ask yourself, when your member of parliament or when your senator stands up in that house and voices a concern on a particular matter, are they representing your views or are they representing other person's views? Somebody will say that, hey, they have to represent the views of the sponsor party, whether in government or in opposition. But was that the anticipation of the law? No. The anticipation of the law was that this parliamentarian has powers, whether in opposition or whether in government, in quotes, to make decisions as per the law and carry out those three activities. So in terms of my view, of course we have a 13th parliament, and it's good that sometimes we have seen senators, we have seen members of parliament questioning their own cabinet secretaries. But hey, we need more of that. Please keep it up. and do that which you have been elected to do.
Okay.
Party politics, whether government or opposition, should not erode that main objective of parliament, because the moment we lose parliament, we are done as a country.
Everything is gone.
Yes.
All right, so we've got to wind up now. In 2 minutes, let's talk about the relationship between the national and county governments. And in the last 12 months, is William Ruto advancing the ideals of devolution? Is he clawing back on devolution? Is he supporting devolution? Is the relationship with the governors working or not?
Well, we've seen him launching projects in the grassroots, very involved in the counties, but we've also seen that there's been strains with the budgets with the counties. So the first few months was tough for county governments, which has created a division. So I do believe that he is working on improving that relationship.
All right, Cornelius?
To the extent that we've seen a bit of fast tracking of executive release to the counties. This for the first time you're saying that there are no delays that they have done very well. But I still feel that there are some functions that are being undertaken by the national government that purely should be left. Like now, this whole idea about agriculture, subsidy to farmers, this should be purely a county business affair. So I still feel that national government is still holding on to what essentially should be done by the county governments. So I think they need to let go some of these state departments and they ensure that counties get adequate resources so that they can function well. Because I think as much as there are challenges, systemic challenges with county governments of corruption and many other things, they still have not yet received enough money to enable them function properly. And I think that is what we had expected, that a substantive amount of resources will be channeled down to the devolved units.
To go into those functions. The president has made a commitment to, and for a unbundling of all the functions that should be devolved. Basically, you're saying is walk the talk.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course, even me, as far as we got into the new financial year without any pending money from national government, I think that was a tick. And we are seeing some kind of collaboration where the president goes to an opposition, quote-unquote, county, and governors will be there and they will work together during the day and they will perform their activities. Of course, in the evening, the governor will be in another rally and they will accuse the president. I mean, that is now the politics bit of it. So for me, I want to see that relationship being taken to the next level. Of course, you know, the deputy president continuously now chairs the IBEC, which is the decision-making level when it comes to finances to those counties. And as Cornelius has said, let's push it more. But on the flip side, I feel that also county governments need to be accountable to the people. From where I sit, a lot has not happened because counties, as they are anticipated, are supposed to serve wananchi on the first tier. Issues of health, issues of ECDE, issues of those village roads and all that, those are still issues that we are still grappling with. I know you want to conclude, but if the local dispensaries and the referral hospitals in counties will be working, then we'll not be having the challenges we have with MTRH, KNH, KUTRH. So I still feel that counties also need to carry their own baggage. They need to carry their own weight. As much as we are pushing national government to ensure that there is more money that goes there and the relationship is better, but also, guys, governors who are watching us, please, can you try to see what you are needed to do? Going to funerals and just harassing people with sirens in the village is not part of your function. You walk in a village and you get a governor with a motorcade and people shoving people from the road, and there's no security risk. Governors, please, which power? Can you show that power by developing those hospitals and ensuring that everything is done?
Thank you very much. Okay. Wakili Reba Samba is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Cornelius Odor is the Deputy Executive Director at the Kenya Human Rights Commission. And Nerima Wako Ojiwa is the Executive Director at Siasa Place. We've been looking back at 1 year in office, President William Ruto, and what he's been doing. How's he fared when it comes to governance? Well, Samba has given him above 5%, in fact, above 6% in all. You've been a bit, okay, all right. Thank you very much for watching Newsline tonight. My name is Eric Latif. Have a lovely evening.